Gentlemen, the most dangerous man in the room is not the man who failed. It's the man who failed and still doesn't know why. Because a man who doesn't know why he keeps bleeding will keep walking into the same blade. Different woman, different boss, different city. Same wound, same outcome. So today, we are talking about belief. Not the soft Instagram caption, good vibes kind. This is the hard, the bone deep kind of belief. I will not be destroyed by this kind of belief. And we're going to talk about the most important awakening a man can have and why most men wait until it's almost too late. So if this channel is reaching you at a moment when you need it, and something tells me it is, subscribe, hit like, and share this video right now. The men around you are drowning and they don't know it. Be the reason one of them finds a lifeline. Help us grow this community because every share matters. I want to tell you about a man that I met recently. He's in mid 30s. Quiet kind of guy. The kind of quiet that is in peace. It is accumulated damage. He came from a broken home. His father married a woman 11 years his senior. It went sideways. His father left. He wanted nothing to do with his own son and never explained why. That silence, that unexplained abandonment, is one of the most psychologically catastrophic things a father can inflict on a child. Not the living without a reason. Because a boy's mind, in the absence of an explanation, will always manufacture one. And that manufactured explanation is always some version of I wasn't worth staying for. In Hold On to Your Kids, Dr. Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Maté, they document in precise clinical terms what happens to boys when paternal attachment is severed or withheld. The wound doesn't close, it reorganizes. It becomes a blueprint, an invisible operating system through which all future relationships are filtered. And this young man, he proved it with surgical precision. He married a single mother, 9 years his senior, with 2 existing children. He was unconsciously replicating his father's pattern, perhaps believing that this time he could make it work where his father had not. She leveraged his love into a lifestyle he couldn't sustain. He borrowed against his future. He left with her children and returned to her former husband. She left with her children and returned to her former husband. What he did is that he rebuilt. He spent everything to marry again. This time, this woman aborted his child and she left him. So he had 2 marriages, no children to call his own, a mountain of debt, and a father who never told him why he didn't matter. So he heard about Unplugged in my Nakageni's radio program in the morning, and he came looking for me. So we're going to see how the pattern is a message here. So here is what Unplugged demands of us when you encounter a story like this. No judgment, just total honesty. Because sympathy without clarity is cruelty dressed as kindness. The pattern that this man lived is not random misfortune. It is a predictable output of an unexamined wound running an uninterrupted program. In The Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Bessel and Kolk arguably one of the most important books on trauma of the last 3 decades. It demonstrates with neurological evidence that unprocessed trauma doesn't just live in memory, it lives in the body. It lives in decision-making architecture. It shapes the partners we choose, the risks we take, the lines we refuse to draw, the abuse we absorb because it feels familiar. He argues that familiarity is not love. It is neurological comfort. The brain defaulting to patterns it already knows, even when those patterns are destroying the host. This man didn't choose badly because he was weak. He chose badly because he was running on inherited code. He had never been given the tools to audit. So Unplugged is not about blaming women. It is about radical self-examination. The first step to unplugging is understanding that the matrix isn't just external. It is a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve. So I want to be honest with you about something personal. I always knew I wanted to write. I read voraciously. I wrote constantly. I built a career, a marriage, a family. I stayed. And as they say, I stayed on the right side of things. My life wasn't dramatic. It was not in ruins. But I only truly knew who I was when I was 42. 42 years old before I really understood what it meant to be a man. Before masculinity stopped being a cultural assumption and became a personal philosophy. Before I stopped inheriting a definition and started forging one. And it startled me. Not embarrassed me. Not shamed me, startled me. The way you are startled when a light comes on in a room you thought you already knew. And the furniture is arranged nothing like you imagined. I was fortunate. I'd spent 20 years sharpening language. And when clarity came, I had the tools to catch it, to name it, to codify it, shape it into something transferable, something that we now know as unplugged. But here is what I want you to hear, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s and reading this from inside the fog. You don't have to wait until you're 42. The knowledge that took me decades of living and a lifetime of reading to assemble, it is now available. It has been articulated by people like me in Unplugged, by men like Rollo Tomassi, Kevin Samuels, Rich Cooper, and others who found their way out of the same maze through different doors and had the courage to draw them up. A young man can sit down for 2 or 3 days, seriously, 2 or 3 days, with the right material, the right questions, and get the right information with the right intention. He will emerge fundamentally reoriented, not fixed, not finished, but reoriented. And that is everything. Now let's look at what belief actually means. And I want to be precise about the word believe, because the culture has diluted it into something sentimental, something passive, something you post under a sunset photo with a motivational font. That is not belief. That is wish. Real belief, the kind that rebuilds men, is what William James, the father of American psychology, called the will to believe. It is an active commitment to a proposition in the absence of certainty, coupled with action congruent with that commitment. It is not feeling confident. It is acting as if, not out of delusion, but out of strategic forward motion while the evidence catches up. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years interviewing 500 of the most successful men in America and distilled their common thread in Think and Grow Rich into a single sentence. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. This is not mysticism. It is a psychology of self-fulfilling prophecy, documented in modern behavioral science as a Pygmalion effect. This is the measurable tendency of belief, both internal and externally projected, to produce the outcomes it anticipates. When you believe in your capacity for excellence, you make different micro decisions. You take different risks. You stay 5 minutes longer. You send the email. You ask the question. You do not quit on a Tuesday afternoon when quitting will be easier. Those micro decisions, they compound. In the growth mindset, Carol Dweck did decades of research, and she demonstrates this with hard data, which shows that individuals who believe their capacities are developable consistently outperform individuals of equal raw talent who believe their capacities are fixed. Not occasionally, not marginally, but systematically and across domains. Of course, this matches up with neuroplasticity. Belief is not the reward for success. Belief is the engine of it. So let's talk about how a man can rebuild from rubble. From the man's wreckage right now. Okay? From a man who is in a wreckage right now, and you know who you are if you are listening to this. Here's an uncompromising framework about how you can rebuild. The first thing you have to do is to name the wound accurately. Not to wallow in it, not to weaponize it, but to audit it. A software engineer cannot fix a bug he refuses to locate. Your father's abandonment, your mother's overreach, your failed marriages, your financial decimation. These are data points. They are not destiny. Write them down. Look at them without flinching. This is the beginning of sovereignty. Secondly, break the inherited program. Identify the pattern. Where have you replicated the dysfunction of your origin? Where have you confused familiarity with love? Where have you chosen women who reflected your wound back at you instead of women who reflected your best future? Okay? The impediment to action, remember, is the action. The wound, confronted directly, becomes the very thing that sharpens you. The third thing you need to do is to rebuild your identity from function, not feeling. You can always choose meaning. Remember that Viktor Frankl told us in conditions of total material deprivation what he stood for. Identity rebuilt on values and function. What you do consistently is far more durable than identity rebuilt on feeling, which fluctuates with circumstance. The fourth thing you need to do is to back your belief with ruthless daily action. And this is where the soft version of the story ends and the real version begins. Belief without action is fantasy. Discipline is the bridge. Joko Willink, who was a Navy commander, said that don't wait for motivation. Motivation is a slave. Discipline is the master. Wake up, execute, repeat for months, for years, until the compounding becomes undeniable. The sixth thing you need to do is to build your world deliberately. The young man who came looking for me does not need to wait 7 years to know himself. He needs a map, a mirror, and a mentor. He needs Unplugged. He needs a community of men who are doing the work and refuse to let each other quit. This is what Theodore Roosevelt called the man in the arena. The one who is in it, failing, rising, bloodied, striving. Not the comfortable critic in the stands. Get in the arena and find men who are already there. Let's look at the story of the men who refused to stay broken. History is populated by men who rebuilt from wreckage that will have finished most people. Look at Frederick Douglass, for example. He was born into slavery. He was denied literacy on threat of violence. He watched his family destroyed by a system designed to break him. He taught himself to read in secret. He articulated his own humanity so precisely that he became one of the most powerful voices in American history. Nobody gave him the tools. He fashioned them from scraps. Anthony Joshua, the boxer, he was sleeping on sofas at 18. He was drifting, he was directionless. He found boxing. He found discipline. He found a reason to wake up. Within a decade, he was a heavyweight champion of the world. He has spoken often about the role of belief, not talent, not luck, as the foundational value. None of these men waited for the world to validate them before they moved. They moved, and the world noticed. So here is something that I've seen proven consistently in my own life and in the lives of men I've worked with. When you commit, when you truly commit, not tentatively, not with a backup plan, the universe reorganizes around your commitment. This is not mysticism. This is the documented psychology of opportunity recognition. This is the cognitive phenomenon whereby a mind focused on a specific goal begins to notice and act on information it previously filtered out. The resources were always there. The people were always in proximity. Your attention makes them visible. The young man who came to me carries wounds I wouldn't wish on anyone. But he also carried something precious. He came looking. He had a name on a radio program, and he showed up. That is not a small thing. That is a first act of a man who has decided to live differently. And if he does the work, if he reads, reflects, builds, and rebuilds, he will look back on this season, not as the worst thing that happened to him, but as a necessary fire. Every man listening to this who has been in the fire, you know what I mean. The fire doesn't just destroy. It reveals what cannot be burned. So if you're in your 20s, wondering why everything feels hollow and directionless, this is your moment. Don't waste it on distraction. Do the work now. If you're in your 30s, carrying wounds you haven't named, repeating patterns you don't understand, this is your turning point. The map exists. Use it. And if you're in your 40s and beyond, just arriving at clarity, welcome. You're on time. There is still an enormous amount of living left to do. The awakening is available to every man who is willing to be honest enough to receive it. Believe in yourself, not as a slogan, but as a discipline. Back it with action that will embarrass your excuses. Build something that will outlast your pain. And then look at what you've made. So I want to hear from you guys. Where are you in this story? Have you experienced a moment of awakening that changed everything? Are you still waiting for it? Are you in the wreckage right now, wondering if the rebuild is possible? Drop your answer in the comment section below. This channel is a conversation, it's not a monologue. Your story might be the exact thing another man needs to read tonight. So subscribe, like, and share. Help us reach the men who are out there right now, quietly bleeding, not knowing the map exists, and above all, get unplugged. The world will not hand you yourself. You have to go find him. Now go. And I'll see you on the next one.